We are Aleph Daled. Rameh says we may eat chametz the entire. Oh,
Come
sorry.
back. We're doing Chazara, Aleph.
All right, Kazar. Okay. All right. I was trying to take your job away. Okay. The
Trying
evening
to
of the
catch me. I
14th.
know you're just testing me.
The evening of the 14th of Nisan, we must search for the chumash by the light of a candle. Any place into which chumash is not brought does not require a search. So why have the sages said two rows of wine cellar must be searched? The sage is referring to a place in which chumash is brought. The Meis Shammai says 2 rows over the entire front of the wine cellar must be searched, but Beis Hillel says the 2 outer rows, which are the uppermost. We need not be concerned that a weasel may have dragged chametz from house to house or place to place, for if so, then we would have to be concerned from courtyard to courtyard, from town to town, and there would be no end to the matter. Rabbi Yehuda says we must search on the evening of the 14th or on the morning of the 14th or at the time of removal. But the Chachamim say if we did not search on the evening of the 14th, we must search on the day of the 14th. If we did not search on the day of the 14th, he must search during the festival. If we did not search during the festival, he must search after the festival. That which he leaves over, he should place in hiding, so that it is not necessary to search for it again.
Okay.
I thought you had to burn it, though. I thought you found that you would burn it.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
if we find it, yeah. So it's talking about the whole thing. If you find it before the Shasabir, like on the 14th, going back on the original search, whatever you find, put it aside. Mm-hmm. And put it in a place where you're going to remember it, and not have to go through the whole thing.
Right.
And everyone's got that story of that one time when they were checking for chametz and couldn't find the pieces that they hid or whatever.
My wife loves when she does that. She gets such a kick out of it. It's always the last one or the last two. All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now, just as a preamble to Mishna Dalet, we're talking about the time until which chametz may be eaten, but when we're talking about hours of the day, we're of course talking about halachic hours. So that's not actual hours. Although at Pesach time you're usually pretty close to the equinox, so a halachic hour around Pesach time is usually about an hour. But it has that fluctuation, and whenever we're talking about hours in halacha during the day, we're talking about halachic hours where you've taken the time between sunrise and sunset and divided by 12. Okay, so Rabbi Meir says that that we can eat until chametz on the 14th of Nisan for the entire first 5 hours of the day. Okay, and we have to burn at the beginning of the 6th hour. Okay, even though by Torah law, chametz is only prohibited from midday. Nonetheless, Chazal made a gezerah to make it an hour earlier, according to Rabbi Meir, in case people miscalculate and think that the 7th hour is still the 6th hour, and then you're immediately over a doraisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ochlin kol arba, you can only eat for the first 4 hours. But Tolin Chol Chamesh, and it's suspended, it's got a dubious status during the 5th hour, which is neither eaten nor burned. Okay, since this is something that everyone does, the Hamon Am, it's a mitzvah that this is not just something where you have a few people doing it on behalf of the nation. You have every single person in the nation is dealing with chametz and erev Pesach. We're including the uneducated people. We're afraid that there might be an error of even 2 hours. So Gemara explains that even though the sun's in the east during the 5th hour and the west during the 7th hour, and people wouldn't really miscalculate, nonetheless, Chazal made this gezerah in case of a cloudy day. Okay, in which case people are liable to miscalculate even between the 5th and 7th hours. Anyway, so Rabbi Yehuda says, and then we burn it at the beginning of the 6th hour, because from this time this is when it's Asur B'Hana. Midrabanan, right? Since the Torah prohibition takes effect at the beginning of the 7th hour. However, you don't have to burn it during the 5th hour because you can still have hana from the chametz during the 5th hour, for example, by feeding it to his cattle. And the halacha does follow Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. V'odamar Rabbi Yehuda. Furthermore, says, you're like branching out into a different subject. Shtei chalos shel toida b'sulos munachos al gaga itztaba. So what do they do as a siman to tell people when is the right time to get rid of your chametz? They would find two chalas which are of a korban torah that had become pasul. Okay, so they keep them aside, and they would put them on top of the itztaba, which was a columned portico in the temples, which is very highly visible, so people can see them as a signal. Okay. As long as the people could see them, then people would be allowed to eat. Then they would take one off and they'd say tolin. Okay, so now this is that's a siman that you're not allowed to eat it anymore. Lo ochlin v'lo sorfin. Nitlu shtehen, but once both of them come down, hischilu kol am sorfin. That's the time to start burning. Rabban Gamliel omer chulin nechalin kol arba. Usruma kol chamesh v'sorfin b'tchilas shesh. So Rabban Gamliel comes and says that regular non-consecrated food of chametz, which is not truma, can be eaten for 4 hours. So he's agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda over here. But truma foods, he says, may be eaten for 5 hours because it's prohibited to destroy truma as long as it may be eaten. Okay, and they burn the chametz of truma at the beginning of the 6th hour because the Chazal prohibited even deriving benefit from chametz at this point. Yeah, the halacha doesn't follow Rabban Gamliel. Rather, everything has the same din, whether it's chulin or truma. It all has the same din, and you're no longer allowed to eat it even after the 4th hour. So it's the same din for everything. Okay. Now comes the famous Mishna of Rabbi Chanina Sagan HaKohanim, which the first time we learned when we did Pesachim, we didn't really have a good opportunity to understand because we hadn't done Taros yet. Now that we've done Taros and we understand a lot more about Tumah and Tara, we can actually get a lot more out of this Mishnah now. So Rabbi Chanina Sagan HaKohanim Omer Mimehem Shel Kohanim says, in all the days of the Kohanim, Lo nimna'u milisrof es habasa shenitma bevlada tumah be'im habasa shenitma be'ava tumah. Afal pi shemosifin tumah al tumah soy. He says there was never a problem with taking. Let's say you have kodshim that became tameh from a vlad hatumah. So a vlad hatumah is a rishon. So hang on, would this be a rishon or would it be a from a sheni, right? So if it contracted tumah from a sheni l'tumah, so let's say you have bread that was touched by a sheretz. So the sheretz is not the sheretz is the avatumah. So let's say you have the sheretz touches a kli, and the kli becomes a sheni l'tumah, becomes a rishon l'tumah, and then the kli touches the bread, which becomes a sheni l'tumah. And then the bread touches the kodshim meat, and it becomes a shlishi l'tumah. Okay. Remember with kodshim can go down to revi. Well, it can go down to it can contract up to the 4th level. In other words, that a shlishi will posel even other kodshim. So now you've got, let's say you've got some kodshim that's a sheni l'tumah, and there's another kodshim that became an av hatumah. It was nitma. It received its tumah from a blood tumah, which is sheni, so it is now a shlishi. Okay, so you got one piece that's a shlishi, and you got another piece that was touched directly by a sheretz. Let's say so it's a rishon. Now, what happens if a shlishi touches a rishon? It goes up to being a sheni.
Right.
Because the rishon pushes it up to being a sheni. So now, what's going to happen to these 2 pieces of meat? Both of them are just going to be burned anyway because they're tameh. So it doesn't make a difference. And that's what Rabbi Chanina is saying. Don't worry about the fact that you're adding tumah. Okay. לא נמנעו מלשרוף את הבשר שנטבע בבלד הטומאה עם הבשר שנטבע באב הטומאה, אף על פי שמוסיפים טומאה על טומאתו, even though you're elevating the טומאה in it. Right? You're making it a higher degree of tumah inside this meat. But nonetheless, tachlis, they're both going to be burned anyway. It made no difference to the halacha, so therefore there's no issue with it. Posif Rabbi Akiva ve'amar mimeim shel kohanim lo nimna'u milahadlik es hashemen shenifsal b'tvul yom v'ner shenitma b'tmei meis. He says, I'll go even further than that. So let's say you've got a person who's a tvul yom. A tvul yom has a din of a sheni l'tumah. Okay, and he touches some oil, and it becomes pasul as a shlishi basically. So it's a shlishi, okay. And then there's a ner shenitma b'tmei meis, and the ner itself is an avatuma. Okay, so now if you've got the candlestick, or at least the candle, the jar of the what's the thing? The oil flask. The oil candle. What's the thing? The name of the container of oil that holds that you burn the oil in? A lamp. A lamp.
Lamp.
Like Aladdin's lamp. Right. So Aladdin's lamp is an avatuma. Okay. And you've got oil that's a shlishi l'tuma. If you put that oil that's a shlishi l'tuma into the lamp that's an avatuma, what's it going to become?
It's going to become an avatuma, no?
It'll become a rishon, because the av touches it and becomes a rishon. Okay, so now that's jumping up 2 levels of tumah. Okay, in any case, whether the oil is a shlishi l'tumah or a rishon l'tumah, it has to be burned. So it doesn't matter that you're burning it inside a kli that's an avatuma. It's completely permitted. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva comes to add to what Rabbi Chanina was saying, that it doesn't matter how many levels of tumah you're adding onto something. If the din before was that it's got to be burned, and the din after is that it has to be burned, then you don't have to be particular about not making it any more tameh.
Just adding the contaminated to contaminated. That's all. You keep adding it, right?
Right. So in terms of right, you're not allowed to take tahor oil and make it tameh. That you're not allowed to do. But if it's already tameh, there's no problem with increasing the level of tumah if it's convenient.
Right, you didn't do it. It became tameh.
It was already tameh. It had a din. It had a din of streifa before. It has a din of streifa afterwards, and therefore you're adding tumah to it had no practical import. So therefore, it is acceptable.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to Erevin. Ches Yud.
So if they were seeing these 2 loaves of bread, were they all burning by the mikdash? Were they all burning like outside the area of the mikdash? They were seeing the.
Well, I mean, much like today, on Erev Pesach, you see these columns of smoke coming up all over the city where people are burning the chametz.
Right. Okay. Yud, Ches Yud.
Ches Yud.
Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, if a drainage conduit is covered by 4 amos in the public domain, we may pour water into it on Shabbos. But the Kakaman said, even if it runs along a roof or a courtyard for 100 amos, then we may not pour into the opening of the conduit, but he pours from the roof to roof, and the water descends into the conduit. A courtyard and a colonnade combined, so total of 4 amos. Similarly, 2 balconies that are opposite one another, if some of them made a pit while others did not make a pit, those who made a pit are permitted, but those who did not make a pit are prohibited. All the roofs of a town are one domain, provided that one roof is not 10 tefachim higher or lower than the others. These are the words of Reb Meir, but the Kakaman say each is a domain by itself. Reb Shimon says roofs, courtyards, and carports are all one domain, with respect to utensils which began the Sabbath in them, but not with respect to utensils which began the Sabbath in the house. So if all the roofs are the same, then
you would be allowed to carry between them.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Shabbos. Base.
Anything that was put into hot water before Shabbos may be soaked in hot water on Shabbos. But anything that was not put in hot water before Shabbos may be rinsed in hot water on Shabbos, except old salted fish, small small salted fish, or a Spanish mackerel, because their rinsing completes their preparation. A person may break open a cask to eat dried figs from it, provided that he does not intend to make a vessel. They may not perforate a bung of a cask. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda, but the Kakaman permit, but one may not perforate it on its side. If it was perforated, we may not place wax upon it because he smooths it. Rabbi Yehuda says an incident came before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in Arav, and he said, I fear on his account that he may be liable for katos. We may place a cooked fish in a pit in order that it be preserved, good water and stale water, and in order that it may cool off, and cold water in the sun in order that it may become warm. One whose garments fell into the water while traveling may continue to walk in them, and he need not fear. When he arrives at the outer courtyard, he may spread them out in the sun, but not in front of the people. One who bathes in the
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Masasheni.
Zion. If a tree stands inside but inclines to the outside, or stands outside and inclines to the inside, what faces the wall inward is considered inside, and what faces the wall outward is considered outside. Oil presses whose entrances are inside but their interiors are outside, or their entrances are outside and their interiors are inside, Beit Shammai say all is considered inside. But Beis Hillel says what faces the wall toward inward is considered inside, and what faces the wall outward is considered outward. The chambers built in the holy part and opening in the non-holy, their interior is not holy, but their roofs are holy. Built in non-holy and opening into holy, their interior is holy, but their roofs are non-holy. Built in the holy and non-holy and opening into the holy and non-holy, their interior and roofs above the holy and toward the holy are holy, above the non-holy and toward the non-holy are non-holy. And if Ma'aser Sheni was brought into Yerushalayim, became unclean, whether it is an avatuna or by a vladatuma, whether inside or outside, Beit Shammai says it must be redeemed and all must be eaten inside, except that which became unclean by an avatuma outside. Beis Hillel says all must be redeemed outside and eaten inside, except that which was redeemed unclean by a vladatuma. Vladatuma inside, right? Okay. All right. That was 2, right? That was 2.
Okay.
If what was brought, oh, we finished. Okay. I just keep going. Every object that contracts treading tuma contracts corpse tuma, but there can be an object that contracts corpse tuma but does not contract treading tuma. Everyone who is eligible to judge capital cases is eligible to judge monetary cases, but there can be someone who is eligible to judge monetary cases but is not eligible to judge capital cases. Everyone who is fit to judge is fit to testify, but there can be someone who is fit to testify but not fit to judge. Every food that is subject to tithes contracts food tumah, but there can be food that contracts food tumah but is not subject to tithes.
Okay,
every
that's it. The short Mishnah is so that's 3.
Okay. If one is suspected of selling truma as ordinary produce, we may not purchase from him even water or salt. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon says, whatever has a connection to truma or ma'aseh, may we not purchase from him. One who is suspected of sabbatical year violations is not suspected of transgressing the laws of ma'aseh. One who is suspected of ma'aseh violations is not suspected of sabbatical violations. One who is suspected of both these violations is suspected of transgressing the law of tahara. And in some cases, one who is suspected of tahara violations is not suspected of violating this one or that one. This is the rule. Whoever suspected of something may neither judge nor testify according to it. And all disqualified offerings may be sold in the market, slaughtered in the marketplace, and be weighed by a lita, with the exception of the bakor and the ma'aseh offerings, because the advantage falls to the owners.
Right. So you see that with the disqualified sacrifices, the benefit that comes from selling them goes to the mikdash, because they come from korbanot. So therefore, we want to get the best possible price for them because ultimately the money is going to Hekdesh. But when it comes to a Bechor, it goes to the owner of the Bechor. So if the owner of the Bechor wants to sell the meat of his Bechor, he's not allowed to do it the normal way. He's got to sell it betina, and it can't be weighed in the normal way, and all these things. So right, yeah, he won't get such a good price for it, but that's his problem. We don't want to. It's more of an issue that we should not treat the Bechor as like merchandise.
With disadvantaged offerings, however, their advantage falls to the holy estate, and a portion may be weighed against a portion in the case of a Bechor. Beis Shammai says,
No, that's it. We've done 3.
Catch me every time. Okay.
I'm sorry if I cut you if you're so enthusiastic about it. So.
We write it with anything, with ink, with orpiment, with red pigment, with gum, with ferrous sulfate, or with anything which is lasting. We do not write it with liquids, nor with fruit juice, nor with anything that is not lasting. We write it upon anything on the leaf of an olive tree, on the horn of a cow, and he gives her the cow, or the horn, or the hand of a slave, and he gives her the slave. Josie the Galilean says we do not write it on a living creature nor on food.
I remember we actually just had this recently. Where did we see this concept recently about writing the get on the cow's horn? Which Masechta we did recently?
I don't.
I remember this. On the cow's horn. Can't remember. Okay.
Okay, good. Then I don't feel bad. Okay. All right. We write. All right, we did that. Right. We do not write it on something attached to the ground. If he wrote it on something attached, then he detached it, completed it, and gave it to her, it's valid. Rabbi Yehuda invalidates it unless its writing and completion are done when it is detached. Rabbi Yehuda ben Becerra says we do not write it on paper which has been erased, nor on unfinished parchment because it can be forged. The sages, however, validate these. And all are qualified to write a get. Even a deaf mute is a dentally deranged person and a minor. A woman may write her own get, and a man may write his own receipt. For the validity of the document is dependent upon only those who sign it. All are qualified to bring a get except a deaf, mute, mentally deranged person, a minor, a blind person, and a Gentile.
Okay. Adkan.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Shkoyach.
I will see you tomorrow. To you. I will see you
Hashem.
tomorrow.
Okay, have a great day.